Level 5 Platinum Edition Queen Mary 2 Ocean Liner build. And this is a 1/400 scale. It's almost a metre long, 85 centimetres, nearly 1,000 parts if you include the Photoetch. And before we go into explaining the picture you're seeing on the screen, I first want to give a well-deserved plug to another channel by the name of Oz Scalemodeling. Oz Scalemodeling is another, as the name suggests, Aussie modeller who's based up in Queensland and does some reviews on Australian suppliers and kits, and throws in a few tips there. Definitely worth taking a look at. You may even see an interview with me done there on his playlist. Definitely worth catching up with. I'll put a link down in the descriptions. But buzz on over there and have a look at his content there, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that. Also, the main big inspiration for building this particular model is thanks to Jason of Modelkit Stuff, whose link will also be down in the bottom, who is also building this ship. And between his videos and my progress, I'll be getting some hints and tips and a few extra details of the build, both through him and the ship's builder, Stephen Payne. So definitely go on over there and have a look at Modelkit Stuff and have a look at what he's got going there. And throughout this build, we'll be taking a lot of advice and tips from how his build goes as well, and hopefully coming up with something with a little bit of extra on top of the normal out-of-the-box build that we've got here. And as you saw in the opening video, this is quite an amazing ocean liner. Being the largest in the world and obviously still operating, although due to the situation at the moment it's not running, but I do hear that it will be cruising next year, so that would be good, and with a bit of luck I might have it built by then. Anyway, so alright, so let's get all the other formalities out of the way, which is if you'd like to follow along, and I really hope you do, on this build series, please subscribe below. Hit the notifications bell so you get notified of when each part of this series comes out, which I'm hoping to do weekly. It shouldn't be a problem, it should come out weekly. And always please comment below. I look forward to reading your comments. If anybody else has built this model, that'd be great too. If you've got any tips, if you've got any questions, you've got any suggestions, whack it all down there in the comments. I really look forward to reading up on the comments, and it's a good way of other people to get information as well, sharing. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, that helps get the word out with the YouTube statistics and get the opportunity for more people to see this video. And let's get on with part 1, and I'll explain why we are looking at my work area. So as you can see in the photograph, this is my build desk, which is also doubles as my dining table. And what I want to do in part 1 is basically go through my setup procedure, particularly for such a large build as this. So what we'll do is we'll look at my layout, my tools that I've got here, just the instructions, how we're going to approach the instructions, and just get everything all set up and ready to go. So to start with, you may notice there's a packet of matches there, and that is only just to show scale of, give you an idea of the scale of things there. So you can see the hole there is actually 85 centimeters long, but that just gives you an idea of how much space this takes up. The camera view that you're looking at is sort of compressed in at the sides. It's actually should be a bit longer in reality, but anyway. So we'll start on the right with the decal sheet that you can see here. Now, the decals won't be used for a while, as far as I can tell with the instructions. So that needs to be placed somewhere quite flat and safe. And probably the same place as next to that, you'll see where the wooden deck is. So the wooden deck sheets are in two pieces. That needs to be kept flat, preferably in somewhere, depending on your climate, somewhere it's not going to get too hot, because they have been known, and I'm not sure which brands, but it has been known that if they get warm on hot days, they can curl up. But if that's happened to you, it's happened to me. So what I will do is I'll put those two on top of each other, and I'll go put them somewhere flat and out of the sunlight in a shady spot, just where they're not going to get touched. I also put those decals in a plastic bag as well, just to keep protected from any dust. And they're all off to the side. Next to that, we've got a little plastic container, and I use these little food containers for Photoetch. They're a good size. Photoetch fits in there, and even though you can't see it in the photo, there's the brass pieces are in there as well. There's some light posts and other little things, maybe a ship's bell, I'm not too sure, but they're all in there. So that's somewhere to keep them safe and flat. Again, just things where things aren't going to get damaged. Now, if we go up to the back above those little sliding doors, you'll see that big white reel up there. That's actually 100 meters of fiber optic cable. And in the little container on top of that contains some LEDs, a bit more fiber optics, some batteries, some photo. So basically, I do hope and do plan to put some lights in this model. I will admit up front, quite nervous about that, because I don't know much about LEDs, but I'm doing a YouTube university course, looking everywhere I can to find out everything I can. So, because I think quite early in the build, I need to be planning out where all this wiring and how this is going to be set up. So that's up there, out of the way, but accessible. Now, down under here, under the rack, or on top of that little bench there, we've got my glasses, and we've got my magnifying glasses there. They're very good for the small parts, always within reach and handy. Then we go back down onto the desk now, and we've got glues. There's a little red base container, so in there we've got our CA glue. I use SMS because I ran out of the Tamiya extra thin, but SMS do supply some really good cement. Same thing pretty much. I use Loctite Precision super glue, CA glue, and of course we've got the Revell contactor there as well, and in there is the little yellow pieces of post-it papers which I use to put the glue on and take them off. And if you notice in front of the paper towel roll there, can't see too clearly, two pens, and in the top of those two pens are two pieces of wire glued in there. One's a little bit smaller than the other, and they're used for applying glue, CA glue, onto very small pieces. Very handy. We'll look at that during the build, you'll see. One other thing I forgot to mention early too is I really highly recommend, if you go back into the playlist, and you will see the unboxing of this. That'd be a good way to start to have a look at what we're heading into here. So the unboxing goes through all the details of this kit and what we got in the box. Okay, so across from there we've got my little nippers, and they're made from, I think it's pronounced Spey, Despay, DSPI, IAE. Very good nippers. Believe it or not, I used to use just a cheap pair that I bought at a local hardware store for as long as I've been modelling. My first model, and we're only talking last year, I used nail clippers to take them off the sprue. You can imagine how that went. These are fantastic. Cleanly takes them off, hardly any cleanup. Much better. I put it off for a long time. They actually cost me about $70, but worth every cent. So below that, we've got some tools down there. We've got a little Stanley knife, which I'm fine with. I know people use number 5 blades on their, knives and things like that. I don't need those. These tools do fine. You pick them up in a hardware store. One's a little bit smaller. They're great for taking off the Photoetch as well. And the good thing with these too is, as it gets blunt, you just slide it up and snap off another piece, and you've got a fresh blade. Works fine. I've got the Master Tools collection of tweezers here. There's 4 different types. Always handy there. These are tools right at my hand on my right hand side there, because these are things you're reaching for all the time. You'll notice that they're not in front. I keep things to the side. You really want to avoid reaching across your model and across your work. That's where things get spilt, damaged, knocked, whatever. So it's a good habit to not reach over your model for your equipment, which takes us up to the top now. So below my light, which is quite a 1,000-watt, luminance or whatever they call it, LED light, which lights up things quite nicely. Behind that down is my instruction manual bracket, which just holds my manual open there. You can't quite see it, but behind the light there's a little peg just holds the top, because these manuals for the Revell kit were quite tall. So that's where I keep the instructions, quite handy in front of me like that. The contraption just to the left of the light there is actually my webcam that I do my recording on. So it was actually a desk lamp converted with some clamps, and then the camera just sits in there and does the job. So that runs down to my laptop at the back, which is doing all the recording. My process here is simply I record everything on OBE Studio, and then I save the files, and then I transfer them onto a USB stick, and then I move over to my main computer where I'll do the editing, which is all done in Filmora. I find does all the job for me and works quite well. What do we got? We got the hull of the ship down here. And more instructions are for the Platinum Edition there. So they show you what all your Photoetch is. They show where all that goes. Your decks, putting the bits of the wooden deck on. They're quite large sheets, so they need to be put somewhere just to the right. So what I do is actually I'll put them up on the shelf under. You can just see the stern of my Arizona up there, but that little bit of glass space underneath is where I usually sit those. So they're within reach but out of the way. The box on my left, sitting on a little table beside me, is where I keep all my sprue parts. Now what I've done is, because these sprues for this kit are so long, some of them are as long as the ship, you can actually cut them, I noticed, and make them smaller. And I've actually done that and moved them into a smaller box, and then I've moved the hull into the original box, and that is just slid underneath my table out of the way as well. But the sprues are all there, and everything's again within reach on my left there. All right, what else is there? Oh, and I like to keep the box art sitting there in front of me at the back of the desk just to glance at and, you know, get inspired a bit more for what I want this thing to look like when it's finished. Okay, so let's get down to the actual model bench and our instruction manual. And here we are. So, Queen Mary 2, let's open it up. And we'll go straight to step 1. Now, page 8 and step 1. So step 1, 2, 3 and 4 are putting down the supports for the props that go on the bottom stern of the ship. And that will be the first thing we need to put together. So what I've done is I've got these sprues here where they are located. And I'll just move this back because I'm finding that the colour adjusts to the white pages and you can't quite see so well. So let's get that set up. That's better. There we go. Right, so these are, as the instructions will show, come in 2 halves. Just a matter of taking these off the sprue. There's 1, 2 there. They'll have to be kept in order because step 1, 2, 3, 4 is the order that later on they need to go into the correct position under the hull. And that's another point I should bring up too, is whatever you do, if you're going to build any model, go through the instructions from front to back and really look at them in detail, because I'll just show you that it's great. You start 1, 2, 3, 4 and you think yep, and you put those together and you put them aside and move on to the next part without labeling those which one you did, like which one was, because they are all different, a little bit different. When it comes to actually putting them on, as you'll see here, you're going to go, oh, so which one was the first one, which one was the second one, third, fourth. I'm sure you could figure it out, but there are times where it can be pretty tricky. So that's how I knew to keep them in that order. Once I make them, I'll label them and put them aside so that I can go, right, that was number 1, 2, and we know what we're up to. Now, what I'm looking at here is, in here also, just have another look, is there's a shaft that goes through the center, and that's where your prop's going to fit on. So I don't think that will need to be painted. It doesn't say it needs to be painted because it's going to be inside the 2 halves, so that should be fine to connect. We do glue either side together, but we don't put glue on the prop because we want that to turn on the shaft, sorry, because we want that to turn. It actually says not to glue on there. So now another thing I noticed was there's a question mark. See the 4 question marks there. So when I go back to the instructions and I look what it says for question marks, glasses unfortunately because the writing is so small. Question mark says optional. So that's what question mark means. I don't understand. I mean, we're only in the first step. What is optional about putting the props on? Quite unusual. Let's just check, because there's also 87 there. I wonder what that means. Let me just check. Okay, so we just figured that out. So the question mark and the number 87 there means that you don't need, it's optional to put them on now. So you can leave that until step 87. You might be thinking 87? Yes, there's actually 89 steps to this build. So to avoid them getting damaged or knocked off, I would be waiting until the end of the build before I put them on as well. And not only that, but you need to be painting this, so your props are obviously going to be a different color, so they can be done separately. So yes, but one thing to note with these is that there are two different types. So 19, there's two number 19 parts and two number 20 parts, and they go on their specific little piece there because of the direction they're turning and the correct angles they have to be at. So again, that's another thing to make sure that we label those so that we know, in 8 months' time when we get to that step, although I'm hoping it won't be that long, which prop goes on which shaft under there. Anyway, that's all good. So that's that. The props are on here, and they do look quite clean. There's no flashing on them. They do look really nice, as you'll see. Get that to focus for me. There, you'll see them there. They're really nice. I guess you could order some brass ones, and actually I'm surprised Platinum Edition didn't come with brass ones, but it didn't come with any of the Photoetch or any of the other stuff, so there's only the plastic ones to use. There's also the other piece here which has these, so they're either left or right or whatever, but again, we'll have to label them to keep them in order. Alright, okay, so let's begin. Okay, we're back, and put those together, just glued them together. Some little pegs there, as you can see, holding them together, and I've numbered them, so I'm not going to mix them up. I thought about just leaving the bits of paper in next to each one, but then I thought if I bump this container and they move around, so I put the numbers on the individual pegs. So basically for these, cut them off the sprue. There's a little bit of sprue that needs to be trimmed off them, but I'd rather do that after they're glued. So they're glued now, they're probably fine. I can take that off now. And what I'll do is I'll just get a little bit of very fine sandpaper and a sanding stick and just get those edges off, sand them down. For the sanding I use the same brand as my nippers, actually, the Display ones. These come in, I actually did a review of these. They're 1000 grade up to 2500, and they come in little compartments. You can buy refills if you need them, and they're quite good. They last quite a while. So what I'll do is I'll just get all the little edges off there, make them nice and smooth, get that top nice and rounded, and they'll be fine, they'll be done. And what I'm also going to do is I've decided to do the props as well, may as well. There's two types, there's parts 19, part 20, two of each, and they're quite easy to tell the difference between, one's obviously one direction, one's facing a different direction, you can tell them apart. So I'll cut them off because they all look quite good. They don't need much cleanup, although I did notice one seemed to have a bit of flashing on the sprue, but again, while I'm sanding these ones and getting these good, I may as well do the props as well. And I'll just pop them in here because what happens usually is when I do get to step 87 at the end of the build and it says, oh, that's when the props go on, and then you go and have a look, oh, I should say screws go on, you realise, oh, I haven't even done them. So if I clean them up and have them sitting in here with these, they're done, they're ready to be painted and so forth, which is another thing too, they've got to be painted. The colour call out for those, I'll just have a quick look. So the colour call out for them is a metallic steel. I will check some reference photos before I think about that, and we'll come back to that. Alright, back shortly. Okay, so I'm back with these pieces and they're all been cleaned up, sanded them all nice and smooth. The screws came up really nice and pretty much no problem at all. So now what I've done is I've just got them all mounted here, and I'm going to go and undercoat these. I'll put a coat on. So what I'm using is Mr. Surfacer 1200. I find this is really easy to use, sprays out of the airbrush nicely, does a nice coverage, and yeah, you just mix it 50-50 with some thinner and no problem at all. So I'll give these a coat. I have some metallic grey, which I went and looked at some reference photos, and that is the colour of these propellers, so they're not bronze or anything else like that. They are a silvery metal grey. So I will be doing the colour, but first I just want to get this primer coat on them, and same with the supports. I'll get them primed up. They will be coloured the same as the hull, so we can put them aside for later. Probably sprayed after they're fitted, or when I spray the hull, not too sure yet, but I haven't got my paint sorted for the hull yet, so I can't paint those, but because I need them to match. So when it comes time to spraying that red hull area, I'll bring these out and give them a coat as well. Alright, we'll be back shortly, and at least we'll have a look at, well, by then I suppose I'll have these sprayed up in the silver. Okay, back in a minute. Welcome back, guys, and I'll just tell you I've finished the painting, the undercoating of the prop supports that go under the ship there. So they're just undercoated. Sorry, there you go. So I'm going to leave them until they're ready for base coat, and they're all numbered so I don't get them mixed up, and protected from the dust. I use my containers for. I've also done the props, and I've put the final coat on these, which have come up really nice. I ended up just going with the aluminium. I think the metallic grey was too dark when I checked the reference photos, but there's what we got with the aluminium. You can see there, really nice finish. They were undercoated, and then I did 2 coats of the aluminium on them, and they're nice and shiny. No clear coat or anything on them. They're just as I finished painting them about 15 minutes ago. Looking good. So I also realised that there's, on the bow of the ship, on the deck, there's spare blades for these. Well, I don't know if they're spare, but they're decorative. They're on the front of the ship there, and there they are on here. They look like little shark's teeth, and they're displayed like little monuments, little statues on the front of the ship, which have to be painted the same colour. So I figured, well, why not? Might as well paint these up as well. Unfortunately, as you'll see, there are supposed to be 8 of them, and I'm missing 2. Well, actually, when I was first opened the box, I found some loose parts in the plastic bags, and one of the parts was one of these, which is good, but there is still one missing. So somewhere between me most likely washing all the parts down in soapy water and cleaning them and rebagging them and moving them around, has lost one of these. Now, I did have a look around. It's highly unlikely I'm going to find that. It's something, it's just too small. So hopefully I'll be able to maybe fabricate something that looks like that. I don't know how. I've checked all the boxes, all the bags. There's definitely not anywhere around. Checked the floor. Anyway, it's pretty much gone, but anyway, that'll come on later. But I'm going to get these ones painted up and get them looking like these, and set them aside for later on in the build when they're ready to be installed on the deck. Okay, back again shortly. Okay, welcome back again, and I'll just show you what I'm up to here. I've painted those little blades that go on the deck in the silver colour, so you can see they've come up quite good. There they go, nice shiny, 2 coats on them. And I'll put those away because they're much later in the build. So there you go. Also, I started on step 5 and 6, which is the propellers that are built into the side of the hull, and I'll just show you on the instructions here. So this is what we're talking about, is these. So these little hatchways that rotate open and closed, and they do sit in there, so you don't glue them in. So you can look through them if you wanted to, and you'll be able to see the propellers that are inside. And these give the ship the ability to pretty much turn on a dime by whipping the water out sideways. So those here, so these ones are all painted, they're undercoated, that's all I've done, because I'm yet to confirm what colour and the mix I'm going to use for that red hull. But before that I've done this, so as you'll see I've done the black around the outside. So what happens is these sit in there like that in the ship. We'll just get this on here, hang on, I'll show you. Right way around, that's it. Obviously that's got to come away. Right, so that's going to sit in there, and the hatchways, little hatches will go on there, and you'll be able to look down inside, and as you can see, looking down in there, you can see where I've painted it, and it's black as the background. That's all I needed to cover, because everything else will be out of sight. And the blades, I'll do that same silver that I've done the other props with, which is the XF16 flat aluminium that I'm using, and I will just simply hand paint those on very shortly, because that's almost dry. The black's almost dry now, so I'll do those, and then I'll start thinking about the colour of the hull, because I need to get that red sorted out to paint those up. With these, only the insides need to be, or probably the top of it, but the insides definitely have to be that red. The rest you won't be able to see. But I'll paint the whole thing red anyway, the whole red. And that's that. And while that's drying, and when I've done that, I've also just been down to the local hardware store and picked myself up a soldering iron with some solder. Now, never in my life have I ever used one of these, so I'm going to start practicing, because I'm going to need to learn how to do this, because the LEDs I plan to put in this ship are going to need me to do some soldering. And I'm feeling a bit more confident about doing LEDs on this ship now, because I've just watched this really good video that went right through all the basics of LEDs and the wiring and power supplies for them and all the different types. So as long as I can get this soldering sorted and I teach myself how to do this properly, which might be a bit tricky at the moment because I don't think I've got any wire to solder. I might be able to pull something out of the wall somewhere just to practice on. No, I won't do that. Alright, back shortly, guys. Hey, hello, welcome back. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to spray the insides of the hull here in undercoat. I've got a white Mr. Surfacer primer which I'm going to be using, and I'll give that a coat in there because what I need to do is paint the inside of this black, because when there's lights in there I don't want it coming through the hull, so I need to make it all black in there. The other thing too is that inside here, it's a bit hard to tell, but where these covered areas are here, obviously it's a lot lighter behind them and you will be able to see through the plastic, the light coming through. So the plan is to mask over those so that when I do paint this black I will leave those bits unpainted, so that I deliberately will have the light being able to see coming through the plastic on those. Alright, so I'm going to go and give these a coat of paint now inside, and then hopefully it won't take long to dry, and later on today I'll be able to start doing the black in there, or at least getting it all masked up ready for the black. Alright, so we'll call this at the end of part 1 here. Part 2 will go into getting more work done on the hull, because I need to get it painted and glued together. That's pretty early on in the instructions, so we'll get into all of that. So yeah, please, if you've got any comments, put any comments down below. If you aren't already subscribed, please do, and hit that notifications bell so you get notified of when all these videos come out during this build. And remember to go back and you can watch the unboxing in this playlist and catch up on what's all involved in this. And don't forget to have a look down in the descriptions there, where I've got the link to Jason and his Modelkit Stuff channel, where he's also building the earlier model of this build, and another Jace from Aussie Scalemodeling. His links down there too. Highly recommend to go have a look at his channel as well. Alright, so don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and I'll see you all in part 2 of our Queen Mary 2 ocean liner build. Till then, bye for now.